Yeah, she doesn't. She doesn't.
I'm the same way. I already took my hand on me, but I'm not going back.
Welcome to one of the most historic communities in the United States. Today's trip will take you from downtown Gettysburg, deep into the heart of Adams County, Pennsylvania. We will travel through open farm pastures and dense woodlots, across ancient creeks and streams, eventually reaching the bountiful apple orchards at the foot of the South Mountain. While this town is best known for the Civil War battle that took place here in 1863 and Abraham Lincoln's famous Gettysburg Address, there is a deeper history to this land. A story that goes beyond the battle. The two locomotives used are the 1863 freight locomotive and the 1786 former Amtrak locomotive. This unit is being renumbered to 1786, a number of special significance, as it is the year Gettysburg was founded.
That's a gorgeous building.
Yeah, I know what it
I'd
is.
like to know what it is. Yeah. It has to do with the college, I guess.
In the decades between the Revolution and the American Civil War, Adams County established itself as a center for commerce, culture, and political activity. Agriculture and carriage making dominated its economy, while new educational institutions broadened the county's cultural horizons. Gettysburg College, then called Pennsylvania College, was founded in 1832. In the area we're now riding through, it is still a renowned institution that is intertwined with the history of Gettysburg.
That is part of the college. So that building over there, guys, that's all part of the college. We got a really good sports team here. It's been around for quite a while. Yeah, when you're going down Main Street, going down Washington
The old
Street, it looks
building.
small, but
Look
it's
at that new
actually
building there.
huge.
Look at it.
Pretty large campus.
Well, what a contrast. Yeah. That's absolutely amazing. No, I'm good. Yeah, are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
You're okay. See, that's what I need. Then I'd be able to cut the grass. Yeah, right. You'd be on the phone talking to Jillian in a heartbeat.
In the area of our current location, you will find the Railroad Pa. In July 1863, the Western Maryland Railroad connected Gettysburg to the east, and an unfinished extension paralleled Chambersburg Pike, now US 30, on the west side of town. Although rails had not yet been laid, the roadbed was finished, including a series of 3 cuts through the north-south ridges.
So, on board today we
On the
have our
afternoon of
concession
July
car.
1st, these served as protection to Confederate units advancing
We've
on
got
the field.
popcorn,
but became a fatal trap which hindered mobility and the ability to return fire when Union troops attacked the cut. The railroad was completed after the war and is still in daily use today. The remains of a Union soldier were discovered in 1997. We know that this unknown soldier was killed up at the top of this ridge on July 1st, 1863, but his remains were not discovered for 130 years. In 1997, he was disinterred and reburied at the Soldiers' National Cemetery in Gettysburg, with full military honors, including the traditional 21-gun salute. By the summer of 1863, the Civil War had been raging for over 2 years. Following a series of decisive victories in Virginia, General Robert E. Lee and his Confederate Army marched north through the Shenandoah Valley into Maryland and Pennsylvania. The primary goal of the invasion was to bring the war into Northern territory. If Lee could win a major battle in Pennsylvania, he could threaten the U.S. Capitol in Washington and possibly force a negotiated surrender with Lincoln. By June of 1863, Lee's army had spread out across south-central Pennsylvania, gathering much-needed supplies and provisions. General George Meade, the new commander of the Union Army, followed Lee into Pennsylvania and positioned his army in defense of Washington. By late June, the two generals were drawn toward each other by a series of roads, all of which converged at the town of Gettysburg. Decades later, the monuments you see today were constructed to honor the Union regiments that fought to defend this ground. Eventually, the land was protected by the We're now entering the area of the Eternal Light Peace Memorial. Dedicated in 1938 on the 75th anniversary of the battle, President Franklin D. Roosevelt spoke to a massive crowd, including many aging Civil War veterans. Atop the monument, a flame burns 24 hours every day in honor of the lasting peace between North and South.
Of course, when you see that, I'll see that one.
Yeah.
We're now riding by the Confederate cannons of Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Henry Carter's battery. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the deafening sounds of artillery fire, heard by Gettysburg civilians as they sheltered in their homes awaiting the end of the battle. There were more than 600 cannons in use during the Battle of Gettysburg. And during the bombardment before Pickett's charge on July 3rd, 200 cannons were firing at the same time.
He was the Confederate general. Yeah. His command was just about totally wiped out.
Really?
Pickett's charge. Well, they were better equipped because all the manufacturing, most of it was done on, the foundries and, the factories to build the cannons.
During this era, rail passenger coaches were often named after inns, reflecting the historical practice of travelers using inns for lodging. This tradition likely started with early coach designs inspired by stagecoaches, creating a sense of community among passengers. The GETR 1862, formerly the Elmira Inn, built in 1949 by the Budd Company for the Pennsylvania Railroad's fleet of streamliners in the fleet of modernism as a 21-roomette sleeper named Elmira Inn. Converted in 1963 as a 72-seat coach for World's Fair service, it later went to the Penn Central and then New Jersey Transit. The car was retired in 1989 and sold to the United Railroad Historical Society. Ringling purchased it for use on the Blue Train in 1991. The car was used exclusively by the Torres family globe of steel riders, as these performers wore 8 motorcycles in a steel sphere for Ringling. Purchased by Pax Rail in 2017, the car was renamed the Elmira Inn. The GETR 1863, formerly the Coatesville Inn, a 1949 Bud Railroad passenger car. Built in 1949 by the Bud Company for the Pennsylvania Railroad as the Coatesville Inn. The car was acquired in 1992 by Ringling for the Blue Unit, acquired in 2017 by Pax Rail. The GETR 1864, formerly the Cedartown, a 1955 Bud-built railroad passenger car. This was originally Seaboard Airline 55 Cedartown. Bud-built in 1955, it eventually found its way to Autotrain before arriving on RBBB's roster in 1982. Pax Rail purchased the car in 2017, renamed it Cedartown. The GETR 1865, formerly the Duke University, a 1950 Bud-built railroad passenger car. Much like the 2 former in-series ex-Pennsylvania Railroad Bud-built passenger cars in our fleet, the former Duke University was built as a 10-roomette, 6 double-bedroom sleeper for the Norfolk and Western Railway. Run in a series that were all named for online schools, such as Virginia Military Institute, Roanoke College, University of Cincinnati, and Ohio State University. After the market for overnight sleeper rail shrank in the 1950s, the N&W sold that car and others to the PRR. PRR owned a controlling interest in N&W at the time, for conversion to coaches for the 1964-1965 New York World's Fair traffic, just like our other 2 former in-series cars.
You're good. Take your time.
Over time, the people of Gettysburg worked to establish a better transportation network. Public funds were used to build roads, and private companies created turnpikes. And like many other areas of the country, there were even attempts to construct a canal. To the south, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad was chartered in 1827, with tracks laid the following year. By 1831, plans were developed to run a railroad through this area, linking the industrial centers along the Susquehanna River with Gettysburg, and extending the line southwest into Maryland to connect with the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal and the B&O Railroad. However, attempts to build this new Pennsylvania Railroad were abandoned, leaving an unfinished railroad bed and deep cuts in the landscape west of Gettysburg. After many challenges, a railroad from the east finally arrived in Gettysburg in 1858, just 5 years before the battle. However, the unfinished railroad cut west of town remained for many years and became a notable feature associated with the Battle of Gettysburg. In the 1880s, the Western Maryland Railroad was extended south into Maryland. At the same time, a new line was built from Mount Holly Springs south to Gettysburg. On March 4, 1884, the 18-mile Gettysburg and Harrisburg Railroad that you are now riding on was completed, marked by the driving of 2 golden spikes into the tracks at Oak Ridge, very close to where we are now traveling. One spike was inscribed with 1863, and the other with 1883. The year standardized time was established in the United States and Canada. The first passenger train on this track ran on April 21st, 1884, pulled by a steam locomotive called South Mountain. South Mountain is the northern extension of the famous Blue Ridge Mountain Range in Tennessee, Virginia, and Maryland. The range extends about 70 miles from the Potomac River to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. During the French and Indian War, the mountain provided protection for area settlers against enemy raids and incursions from the west. And during the Civil War, it served a critical role in disguising the movements of the invading Confederate forces.
During the French and Indian War, frontier settlers, they faced a lot of different raids and violence, promoting local religions known as criminal penalty. Was an early prominent settler. And he owned much of the land that we're passing through right now. 20 years later, he took up an army during the American Revolution. So he goes Spanish-speaking custom turkeys out there. You will see deer. We have Lake Forest County on this far, this side of the train over here.
We got a beautiful out there.
Here during colonial times was a harsh existence. During the French and Indian War, many settlements were raided by enemy forces, and dozens of civilians were killed or carried off as captives. Local men formed militia units and marched into western Pennsylvania together with British forces, and eventually the threat was eliminated with the capture of Fort Duquesne at present-day Pittsburgh in 1758. One of the local heroes of the French and Indian War was Colonel Hans Hamilton, an early settler who at one time owned much of the land in the area we're riding through now. 20 years later, men from this area once again rallied to defend their homes and villages, this time serving in the Continental Army against the British during the American Revolution. Today, cemeteries and churchyards across Adams County are filled with the graves of these revolutionary patriots.
There's a couple of trees down here.
reaching the Newville or Biglerville Road, modern-day Route 34, leading north out of Gettysburg. This is one of the 10 major roads that converge at Gettysburg. On July 1st, 1863, about 7,000 men of Confederate General Robert Rose's division passed here on their way to join the battle.
Beehive would be fun to do. Don't know anything about it.
I don't know anything about it, except that they stink. Yeah.
The route of the Gettysburg and Harrisburg Railroad line passed through undeveloped farmland. Several stops were just platforms set up next to farmlands, providing locals with an opportunity to deliver their goods to a larger market. One of these stops was Table Rock Station, which we will pass momentarily. The northern and eastern portions of Adams County flow into the Susquehanna River and the Chesapeake Bay. In the south and west, streams make their way to the Monocacy River and eventually to the Potomac. These ancient waterways were vital to the lives of both Native Americans and the Europeans who came after them.